Council, come to order. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mandy, could you please call the roll?
Raiderhorse?
Yes.
Danstra?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ford?
Here.
And DeYoung is absent.
All right. If you're on the phone, for those of you attending via the phone, you will be able to provide verbal comments during the dedicated public forums and public hearings. I would just ask that please keep your microphones or telephones on mute until the time that you wish to speak. Can I get a motion for approval of our tentative agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Miranda, Horace, Hopkins. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call roll.
Raiderhorse?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Danstra?
Yes.
Carlstone?
All right, at this point, we have an opportunity for anyone wishing to address council regarding agenda items. If you want to do that, please come forward, state your name and address. Work very hard to keep your comments 3 minutes, if you would. Okay, seeing none, we will move along. Can I get a motion for approval of our consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Bannister, Spore. Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Danstra?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Raiderhorse?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes. Motion passed. Okay, moving to public hearing regarding the transfer of real estate to the Pella Community School District. Mike, can you explain, please?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. And for those following at home, I'm on slide number 2 this evening. As Mayor DeWard stated, tonight's public hearing is in regard as proposed transfer to the Pella Community School District, and this would be for the North Caldwell Park, which is approximately 7.3 acres. And we do have an exhibit of the area that we're talking about for North Caldwell Park. And generally speaking, this is the area that would be north of University Street here. If you recall, the school district recently held a referendum, and part of the referendum was a new tennis court complex. Proposed location for the tennis court complex would be on North Caldwell Park that we're going to be discussing this evening. And specifically what the plans would be is the school district plans to build a new complex on North Caldwell Park. It's our understanding that the construction on this project could be potentially this summer as well. The city has plans, as the council is aware, to reconstruct University Street along with East 8th Street this summer as well. So with that, that is the purpose of tonight's transfer that we are considering. Now, we have a couple of action items on the agenda. Agenda item E1B, this resolution terminates the 2080 agreement that we have with the school district, which covers the maintenance of the existing tennis courts on this as well. So it terminates the agreement. And Mandy, let's go ahead, please. The second resolution that we have on the agenda tonight, this actually approves the transfer of North Caldwell Park, which once again is about 7.3 acres to the Pellet Community School District. And we do have a diagram or a color elevation of the proposed tennis courts complex. The outdoor courts, it's staff's understanding that this is what is being planned in phase 1 of the project, along with the new parking lot along East 8th Street. The indoor tennis courts are dependent upon future fundraising for the school district. So it is important to note that once the city would transfer the property to the school district, any tennis courts that would be built on the property, the general public would still have access to the tennis courts when they're not being used by the Pellet Community School District. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes staff's presentation this evening. Be more than happy to answer any questions the council may have on this item, or these items.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any written comments received about this
No
subject?
written comments.
All right, council, comments, questions? Any member of the audience want to address us about this particular subject? All right, then I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Vanstra, Hopkins, any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Danstra?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Raiderhorse?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to the resolution resolution number 6401 entitled Resolution Terminating Shared Use Agreement with Pella Community School District. I think Mike already explained it. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support. Vanderhorst, is that Hopkins?
Yeah.
Any discussion?
Just a quick, has the school district already approved the terminating the resolution?
It's our understanding that they will be addressing this during their March 7th meeting, both the
Okay.
termination, also the acceptance of the property if the council approves the transfer tonight. So,
Okay.
All right, anything else? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
yes.
Ford.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Now moving on to resolution number 6402 entitled Resolution Approving a Transfer of Real Property Owned by the City of Pella, Iowa to the Pella Community School District. Had it explained, so can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support. Vanderhorst, Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Moving on, public hearing regarding a rezoning application submitted by ATI Group for a 108.41 acre parcel of land at the northern terminus of Hazel Street and Country Club Drive. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As the board stated, what tonight's public hearing is about is a rezoning request that's been submitted to the city by the ATI Group. Now, this particular rezoning request is for a 108-acre parcel that's located just north of Hazel Street. We have a map that better identifies the area, but this is generally the area of the point where Hazel Street terminates into East Park Lane that we are talking about. It's also highlighted up here on the big board that we have as well. Now, specifically what this rezoning request is this evening that we're entertaining is this property is currently zoned. The southern half, I believe what is inside the city limits, is zoned R1, that's low-density residential, and the northern portion that's located outside the city limits is currently zoned A1 Ag. What's being requested is to actually rezone the property to R1A. That's another low-density rezoning, and generally the difference between R1 and R1A, and Jerry Bidas can correct me if I'm wrong, but the minimum lot size decreases from 10,000 square feet to 8,500 square feet. In addition, single-family attached homes are also allowed under R1A as well. So let's go ahead, Mandy, and proceed with the presentation. Now, we do have a description of the proposed zoning district up there on the big board. And as you can see, the current zoning district is R1 here, and there's not a significant difference between R1 zoning and R1A. A1 Ag is to the north right up here as well. So let's go ahead, and it is important to note, before we go ahead, Mandy, I know I'm mixing up here, but anytime you rezone property, it's always important to look at what the budding zoning districts are as well. As you can see, we do have some existing R1A that is located currently to the south of the property, R1. And so from a zoning standpoint, when you look at it, it fits very well what's being requested this evening. Like we said,
You are muted by the host.
there's not a significant difference between
You are
R1
unmuted by the host.
A zoning as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, for those following at home, I'm on slide number 6. It is important to note, anytime we do a rezoning, we always want to compare the rezoning request and really use as a guide the city's comprehensive plan. When you hear the terminology conformance with the city's comprehensive plan, what we're talking about is not just sections of the document, but the document as a whole. So when we look at conformance with the city's comprehensive plan, usually one of the first places that we start off with is the future use land map. And the future use land map, by and large, pretty much just identifies the current zoning on the parcel that we have. As you can see, the southern portion of what's inside the city limits is low-density residential. To the north is ag property as well. And as you can see, some of the other zoning districts that we have as far as the comprehensive plan specify low-density residential as well. So from a future use land standpoint, we think that the proposed rezoning does align with the city's comprehensive plan. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, when we look at it, we also look at it from a land use compatibility matrix. So when the city does this, the reason we look at land use compatibility matrix to the existing zoning out there is we try to identify any type of land use conflicts that may be noted in the area. And by and large, the area is currently surrounded by residential and low-density medical and assisted living. And from our standpoint, those uses rank fairly high on the compatibility matrix chart, which means they're compatible in land uses as well. Was noted at the A1 Ag with a 3, which we view as acceptable in this case as well. Now, one of the other items that I'd like to stress, if you recall, when we talk about performance with the city's comprehensive plan, we also want to look at the key strategic priorities in the city's comprehensive plan. When the comprehensive plan was drafted, it is still the case today, additional housing for our community was viewed as vital on this. And that was one of the key strategic objectives in the city's comprehensive plan. In addition, the comprehensive plan also talked about various strategies to encourage housing within our community. When we look at this request and the proposed housing that is associated with the request, we believe that this request meets the key strategic priority for the city of Pella. So in summary, looking at the request, we believe that the request aligns with the future use land map. We also believe it aligns very well based off our land use compatibility matrix with the existing neighborhood out there, what's being proposed. In addition, we feel it meets the key strategic priorities of the city's comprehensive plan. So staff's position in looking at this matter is we do believe it is in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. Now, Mayor, in summary, as far as our presentation this evening, we believe that it aligns with the city's comprehensive plan. City staff is recommending approval of the request as submitted this evening. And it is also important to note that this item was passed by the Planning and Zoning Commission on a 4-3 vote at their meeting last night. So with that, that completes the presentation this evening. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor or council may have on this item.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Mandy, any written comments?
We've received 2 written comments and both were in the council packet.
Okay. Council, questions, comments?
I don't think we received the notes from, it was last night's planning and zoning. I'm curious as to what their discussions were and maybe what the 3 dissents issues were. Do we have any way of knowing that?
Well, our planning and zoning director, I'm sure Jerry would be happy to give us kind of a summary of the points of discussion last night from the commission.
Well, absolutely, Jerry Bidas, planning and zoning director. The majority of the comments came down to access points. Understanding that Hazel is currently a dead end and so is Country Club. The residents that did speak basically mentioned that there is fear of traffic coming down Hazel and being congested. The converse discussion to that is with the plan, we would then tie Country Club and Hazel together in the new development, so it would actually provide an additional egress out of the development. So that was kind of the counterbalance of the 2 discussions tonight. So that was the majority of the discussions from the planning and zoning commission.
And I would also like to add, and I would be remiss, that when we look at most developments for the city of Pella, they're done in stages, and there's various input stages. Usually when we deal with traffic, it's always, you could talk about the rezoning, but typically we reserve traffic analysis and those types of questions for the subdivision process at this point in time. And so when we look at it from a land use and a rezoning, it really focuses on the use and what's being proposed as a use. And from our standpoint, when we get into things such as traffic at exit points and various layouts of the development, usually those items are addressed during the city subdivision process as well. So please keep this in mind. This is usually the first step in a development through the development process, is the rezoning.
And then I would assume also that there's no real plans in place yet, like mapped out as to what some of those plots would look like.
Well, yeah, we've had generally concept plans, but the thing is, keep in mind, when you have a concept plan on it during the planning process, if the property were to be rezoned, or even with the lower portion with it, but generally when we talk about the subdivision process, what would happen with the whole 108 acres is you'd have an overall master development plan submitted to the city called the preliminary plat. That would not address only traffic and the city zoning ordinances on this. That would also address all infrastructure requirements for the development as well. And then the second component, during the subdivision process, there's a final plating process. Developments are usually done in stages. So you would have a master plan on the whole 108 acres, and then you would have what's called a final plat for any phases of the development that the developer wished to proceed with as well. My point being is that there's stages of the development, and usually those traffic and those finer points are discussed during the plating process generally.
So I'll just add, and Jerry can jump in on this if he wants. There was also, I would say a little bit, I happened to be at the P&Z meeting last night, a little bit of nervousness of approving this without a site plan, but then Jerry also said that also is approved at later stages as well. And there was also some comparisons to Prairie Ridge that what was presented at this level did not turn out to be what was the subcommission members thought, but also Jerry noted that market forces changed during that time as well too. So those things get debated and voted upon at the time. So I would say those were maybe, to answer Spencer's thing, some issues that the P&Z folks brought up as well, from what I heard it anyway. Jerry, you want to comment on that, or did I miss the boat on that?
No, you were accurate.
Okay.
Remind me one more time, R1 to R1A allows smaller lots.
Yeah.
Still single family only.
Yeah, well, what would happen in R1, the difference, I believe, between R1 and his two items, R1 has a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. R1A, I believe the minimum lot size would be 8,500 square feet. An additional use type, I believe, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, single family attached is also allowed in R1A.
That is
as well.
correct.
I missed it, I thought you said detached. So
No, this would be attached.
What is, maybe Denny, is Denny here? Can you speak to that? What's Hazel and Country Club? What do they look like as far as, that's a big plot of land handling extra traffic?
Well, Country Club's more of a local street, only 25 feet width, if I remember. Hazel's considered the local collector of the area. And long-term, the last time the comp plan was talked about, at some point, the hope is Hazel goes clear north to attach to the county road, but it also has to split to the west, somewhere in the area between Big Rock and Fountain Hills. Decided back in to then divide all that traffic, it's not coming from the south, like it will for the first few years.
And those are stipulations we could ask to be put into at the next couple of levels.
Excuse me?
Egress is like Denny's alluding to split the traffic.
Yes, to keep in mind that the city zoning requirements already requires city streets to be extended to property lines on it as well. And so generally speaking, when you deal with preliminary plats, it's an engineering analysis of the property, address not only street access, but there's stormwater detention and a lot of other things that it can address. But those items would generally be looked at during the subdivision process, and that is correct.
In the subdivision process, the council still has the ability to make suggestions
Absolutely.
in that?
Absolutely.
As far as placement of the various types of housing?
As far as the placement, the subdivision, at the subdivision process, as far as the use types on it, the subdivision, we'd be looking at the city's traffic issues pertaining to that. There would be a heavy dose of traffic, there'd be a heavy dose of infrastructure requirements at the subdivision planning requirement at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a way to get currently, or discussions, to get another road out to the west or to the north?
Mandy, if you could go back to our map, please. Councilmember Hopkins, and so as far as the city-initiated project going to the west,
Or developer initiated, is there any land that would be available to put, to get to Main Street or to get to the county road currently that we know of?
as far as availability, Denny and Jerry, the city doesn't own any property up in this general area, and I guess I'm not aware.
No, like I said, last comp plan, there's a lot of discussion of getting out to the west, because that's the closest, the shortest route. I know there was a lot of discussion, at one point, it was considered to be further south, down on the Big Rock Road area, and there was groups of folks against it being that far south, so it kind of drifted further north to line up, or somehow get to northeasterly to tie with Fountain Hills. Now also, I don't think it ever ended up on the maps, but you have Park that will have to go all the way east someday, across the creek, all the way to 240.
There's an old 40-foot county right-of-way on that stretch. The rest of this, there's not.
For park, you said?
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, and these folks can, I think I heard that the concept plan was maybe to have 80% single-family homes and 20% attached. Is that correct? And I know that can change, but that's the direction leaning right now.
Yeah, so I'm DJ with ATI Group, so we're the developer for this project. Our overall concept plan that we've kind of submitted and what our overall intentions would be about 80% single-family detached and 20% single-family attached. And I know, at P&Z there was concern that it would be, lot sizes would be like Prairie Ridge maybe, or home values would be Prairie Ridge. And I think our goal for this development, a lot of it's market driven, but what our goals are and what we see the market needs is more of that, like Boss Ridge, Fountain Hills type home. Is that we're not looking for entry level here. We have a lot of lots in Prairie Ridge, and an entire development out there that can support more of that market, kind of the entry level. So we're looking kind of higher priced homes here, market, kind of that market value of, I would say, 400 plus, 350 plus, somewhere in that range.
So, and the Prairie Ridge lots are 5,000 square feet, right? And so these, under this zoning, they'd be 8,500, or could be 8,500.
In our lot width in Prairie Ridge is over 50 foot for the most part on average. That's correct. And then here, ideally where we'd like to be is
the current concept has lots of 80 to 100 feet wide, single family lots 80 to 100 feet wide.
Then Prairie Ridge, we had to adjust some setbacks, and that's not contemplated here, is it?
No.
No.
No, Prairie Ridge was geared towards a workforce housing development, and it was actually done through PUD from the zoning standpoint. So there was various modifications to the city's zoning ordinance to allow Prairie Ridge, but it was a different type of development that was proposed for Prairie Ridge compared to this development.
So, yeah, I mean, you could be before us with a site or a site plan and on the zoned R1 without having to rezone anything. I mean, so there's a lot of processes before, after this to work through before any kind of construction begins. Yeah. Anything else, council?
I feel like the zoning makes sense. My concern is just simply access on the streets currently. What are future options to make a loop, down the road?
One thing I would point out is the plan would definitely not be to develop this all at one time. And so it would be, a first phase that would, be maybe 25 acres, I think is kind of what we're looking at, up against the south property line. And then, obviously as things grow, then there would likely be a discussion about how to plan for that future connection, but not planning to bring it all on at once.
Well, I know in the 40 years that I've lived in Pella, that has been talked about as a housing development potential with the golf course there. So it's been the land was never available before. Okay, anything else? All right, so now we're to the point where members of the audience, if you want to address us on this item, please come forward. Give us your name and address and make your comments about this.
I'm Ann Summit. I live at 1435 Hazel Street, which is within 300 feet. We are a dead end with 20 plus homes on it right now. And only a few of us were notified of this. I really feel this is a whole neighborhood situation due to the dead end and the unavailability of only having one inlet and outlet. last night at the planning and zoning, we were told that there was in the master concept plan a road that's supposed to be coming in from North Main. It's my understanding. I really think we're putting the cart before the horse. I think that road needs to be there before this development starts. It's scary. You know, that Vermeer tornado was a quarter mile from us. We could have had all kinds of things shut us down. We're down there. And we need to be aware that there are children on this street, and we're going to be bringing in big trucks and equipment and that type of thing. You know, we're citizens of Pella, and we need to be heard too. And I did get on ATI's website today, and I noticed that this is already on their website as a plan. There's no plan there. It said it's coming available, but it's already on the website for them, for Pella. And it hasn't even been approved yet. So that kind of concerns me a little bit. Thank you.
Wayne Steenstra. I live at 1005 Broadway, and I'm an adjacent property owner. I've got about 9 acres, which is just north of the golf course partially. It's a L-shaped property, right? This property right here. And I wrote a letter, but I'm not sure if it got in because I was out of town and just got back this weekend. I just want to read part of it. I disagree in changing existing zoning. I think they were correct in the long-term comprehensive plan to have that as low density. The existing infrastructure does not support having a high density in that area. If the company requests a change in zoning, they should at least accompany the request with some sort of a plan that shows what they plan on doing with the property they're requesting to be rezoned. Thank you for your consideration. And the biggest problem I have is the density. Once it's changed to R1A, let's say the developers decide not to do it for whatever reason. Someone come in and it's zoned R1A, it could all be duplexes. They would have to get approved, but it's zoned for duplexes. And the density would be way too high for the streets that are there right now to handle the capacity that the traffic and people that would be living in that area. And I've gone through this twice before on the road on my property, and it finally got moved to the north where it would come out at Fountain View Drive, where the playground is. And that would be the preferable. But that's not going to go in until Leslie Life does a project and they put the road in, because that's how the development works. So they may never do anything there. We may have a situation like they have on, I believe it's West 4th Street, where you have to go around Park Lane to get back into that development. And I know people that were talking about building there, and they were told, yeah, in a year or two. 25 years later, they still have to go all the way around Park Lane to get to their house and all the way back again. And it never happened. And so what do we do so we don't have something like that happen again? And as someone wanting to know what's going to happen, there's no plan. How hard is it to at least come up with an initial drawing of this is what we'd like to do, rather than just say we'd like to maybe do so many single family and so many duplexes, where then eventually it could be all duplexes. There's no plan. I think we're way too early to be doing this. I know we need housing in Pella. I think single family would probably sell would be better for that area than having it so dense. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the council, Mr. Mayor. My name is Sergeant Matt Trout. I'm the local National Guard recruiter. Also live at Country Club Drive. Got a couple neighbors I see that came out. And Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to hear that you're moving off the street. We're going to miss you. But our biggest concern, I come tonight as a parent. Our biggest concern is the traffic. And I know we've discussed that, hey, that's a later issue. We're just rezoning at this point. But I agree also that I feel like we need a plan before we consider rezoning. The biggest thing is I think about my children, right? We just celebrated the birth of our second child. It was 5 That's why I'm rocking the beard on paternity leave here. Normally high and tight, right, Paul? Right, and our biggest concern is for our children, right? On Country Club Drive alone, we have over 20 children that are under the age of 12, and they're constantly, crossing the street, riding on bikes, and it's a safe neighborhood. So I'm not opposed to developments, right? I think Pella definitely needs more housing. I've sat in the chamber meetings in the morning at 7 a.m. via Zoom, and that is a huge concern with the growth and the amount of jobs that we have. But my concern is as a parent, the amount of traffic that's going to come in. If we could have a plan, if we could see the numbers, where the roads are going to shift and everything coming in and out. And I know, like we said earlier, this is a later thing that would be decided upon. If we could decide upon it earlier, then we at least would have a better idea and a warm and fuzzy on it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Pam Boat, 101 Park Lane. Rick and I purchased our property on Park Lane in 1988, and it was a quiet little street. In fact, it still is. It's gravel. It's never been paved. So we're one of those rare people that live in the city but have never had their street paved. We don't have street lights. We are too needy in our little area. We bought the property. We bought 5 acres. We developed it with a pond, built a nice house on it, and we feel like we've established ourselves, we've paid city taxes, and then suddenly it feels like everything is coming around us. And Brian Van Haften last night made a comment about respecting the property owners that have already existed there for many years. So our house has been there since 2001, and we have enjoyed that little space of quiet and peace. And it just is very hard for us to see that go away. And I just hope that you do keep us in mind when you think about the things that you're weighing on today. And I appreciate your consideration in this matter. Thank you.
Mike and Nickel, 1440 Country Club Drive. So I just wanted to echo what some of the other people said. I've lived on that street for 20 years. There's a lot of kids. It's a dead-end drive. And I know you mentioned that it's maybe premature to talk about traffic and stuff, but I think that's the primary concern for those of us on that street. So we're not opposed to development and stuff, but if that became a through street, I think that would become incredibly unsafe. If you look at the elevation of the street, it's pretty much flat for 3/4 of the way, and then it dips way down. And if that was a through street, the speed at which people would be going when they hit that dip and wouldn't be able to see if there's kids running around and that kind of stuff is highly concerning to me, and that's the primary concern for me is the traffic and how that would affect the safety of that street. So I would appreciate that to be considered sooner rather than later, like others have said. So, thank you.
Brian Van Haften, 205 East Park Lane. And a couple of things that I want to make sure that we think about as we go forward. Number one is we have a lot of requirements in the city of Pella of how we do things. And so there's a beautiful barn on this property. Could that be built into the area and how it perceives as a beautiful country area? Number two, neither one of the two streets have sidewalks. Could those be built before anything is done related to the development? Third, there's a lot of people concerned as much about the pre-building and the building as they are the actual development itself. So is there a way to consider building the road from the west to the east to eliminate any housing issues as far as people who currently live there? that would eliminate a lot of people's concerns if that could be done first. And last but not least, I really believe that despite the development is always needed, the respectfulness of the current property values of the people there and where we place the multifamily type environment in this development is probably a really critical concern for people. So those would be the four kind of components that I would really respectfully have you take into consideration, because we are taking a leap of faith without really fully understanding how the map and what it's going to look like long term. So if some of those parameters can be put in place, I think you can eliminate some of people's concerns and how it looks long term. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I walked into City Hall today to find out, and they told me the meeting was at the Public Works. Subsequently, I walked in as you were closing public comments. If I could get 2 minutes after your vote on this issue, I'd appreciate it.
On this issue? Or the
Well,
one?
after you're done.
Well, we're
taking care
still
of
in
it.
the public
Right.
comment section of this issue.
Right, I understand.
So you can do them now.
It's not about this.
Oh, it's the other.
Yeah, I missed your initial one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll give you an opportunity. Okay, anyone else? You guys want to say anything as developers?
Step up to the podium.
Yeah, if you would, don't mind, so everybody can hear you.
Casey Shakewell, ATI Group. We are the ones proposing this development, and we have heard you loud and clear as far as your concerns go. And I'm not sure if it's appropriate to share a concept at this level. It feels like if we did share a concept, it would definitely alleviate a lot of concerns. Many of the concerns about where multifamily is placed versus existing single-family houses would be alleviated. Our intent is to create a buffer between any multifamily and single-family. So if you live in a single-family home out there, our intent is to put single-family homes next to those homes, not put an attached product next to an existing single-family product. So as far as respecting properties and existing residents that live there, that is 100% our intent. These lots that we're proposing, the single-family portion of the project, they are larger than I think any lots that we are platting in the Des Moines area. And the reason is because it is a beautiful place out there, and the intent is for it to be an estate, estate-style development, just large lots, spacious and beautiful. And that's what it is today, and that's what many of the homes that surround it are. And so our intent is to try to carry that through into this piece. We do not intend to maximize the density of this piece. It would not be in our benefit to do that, in that we would have to destroy all the beautiful character that's out there. And so our intent is to make it, this will not be a high-density product. This is a low-density zoning in that there are some units that are allowed to be attached, but we're not proposing and we're not considering doing small attached units. These will be spacious homes, spacious properties, and so I guess I just wanted to share that, in that I think that would alleviate a lot of the concerns. This is not intended to be a high-density development. That would be destroying all the character of the property, and we don't want to do that. So, as far as traffic goes, there will be traffic and there will be construction traffic if this is allowed to go forward. I will pass out my phone number, and you can give me the phone calls and the complaints, and I can talk to our contractors if it becomes an issue. We will work with reputable contractors that take this kind of thing seriously, and we will do our best to make sure that it's minimized. I cannot promise you that there will not be inconveniences, because there will be. That is the nature of construction, and so we'll do our best to minimize that. But there will be an inconvenience at some point, and the best thing we can do is just own that and do our best to fix it for you. So that's about all I have. If there's any questions specific to the development, I'd be happy to.
How critical is the rezoning to allow the attached structures to the project?
We talked about that last night after some of the discussion, and it would be our desire to be able to have some attached units, and it's not to provide a cheap product, it's to provide a community type of feel. And so how critical is it? I guess that could be debated, but the beauty of the R1A zoning is it allows flexibility in that you can have a pocket of attached units, and the rest of it can be in the same zoning, and they can all be large 80 and 100-foot wide lots that back up to trees and are beautiful. And so that is the intent and the reason why we're requesting the R1A. And that was also kind of, in strategizing and discussions with city staff, that it kind of seemed like that was the most appropriate zoning to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with development.
Not holding to any requirement, what would be the square footage of the attached each side, approximately?
Yeah. So for the attached units, what the goal is, and what we've heard from realtors, people on the market, so we're not, this is not your first time, I'm gonna go buy, one half of a buy attached product. That's not who we're going after here. It is the 55 plus zero entry where you have less maintenance on your house. And I think we've seen the demand here, and we know that the demand's here. So that and I think what Casey's kind of talking about is the community feel, where if you don't want to maintain a full-on house, but you want to live in town, you want to have zero entry, no basement, but size-wise, I mean, a builder that we're talking to that would come in and build quite a few of these, that's the market he's going after, and it's 1,800, 2,000 plus. So we're not talking prairies, we're not talking small, it's not entry-level stuff. And this is a unique area, it's a beautiful area, I think it'll be a desirable area, but it's definitely larger and I would say higher end.
Which we have a lot of those already in town, mixed in a lot of places. Probably 80 of them, probably better. Okay.
Any questions for me?
Thanks. All right.
Mr. Mayor, may I make another question? Trying on the history, look at the zoning map overview here. It seems like a lot of the northeast side of town is this R1A. Is there a history lesson behind that? That seems, you zoom out, there's not a whole lot of other R1A in the city. Was that changed more recently, or was that from early on? Mark's not here to give us the history perspective, but it seems high R1A density there versus, and I get there's a subtle difference, but what I'm hearing from neighbors especially is that is the difference, because there's no control over, I mean, I appreciate what y'all said, but there's nothing in writing. Market forces could change. All of a sudden, valuable property, no matter how big or small it is, becomes different. So I can certainly empathize with how they would feel. I guess I'm curious about the history of how R1A got so dense in this northeast side versus other areas, or whatnot. Any chance we could comment on that would be great.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to have to pass on that one because I'm trying to recall any type of rezoning actions that the city's undertaken in recent memory up there as far as the R1. I'm drawing a blank on it from our standpoint, staff standpoint. We treat R1A and R1 almost as interchangeable from a planning standpoint. So I'm afraid I can't comment on the history up there. Councilmember DeYoung would have a definitely better handle on that in any type of zoning actions that may have taken or rezoning actions on it as well.
Bandy, did he get dialed in?
No, he's not on.
Okay.
The sidewalks thing, is that for Hazel and for Country Club Drive? Is it possible to add sidewalks? Because I know that there are not sidewalks in that area, and I think if there is going to be more traffic for kiddos, for dog walkers, etc., is it possible to pursue that?
Yeah, as far as Denny, chime in and help me out here, and Jerry, as far as when we look off-site off the zoning actions, any actions that the city council would want to take a look at, such as adding sidewalks, that's a separate action. We can look at it as far as development matters in this general area, as far as adding sidewalks and the feasibility of that as well. So we would be happy from staff standpoint to take a look at those issues.
I think that'd be,
Well, I think there'd be no question, if those streets are extended, there would have to be sidewalks.
I know, but if construction's gonna be happening,
Yeah.
does that at least allow those who are on those blocks to
I
maintain
don't know the
activity?
process for installing sidewalks.
Well, there's a process under city code for it, and we want to take a look at it. Looking at the city, the biggest issue, and why I'm hesitant to comment, is when you look at the right-of-way areas and you look at the sidewalk in proximity to the streets, both on Country Club and Hazel Street, we want to take a look at where the sidewalks could be placed and just the logistics of it as well. But we'd be happy to take a look at that.
Another question, is there a way to R1A a certain portion of this dark purple versus the entirety?
We
Because
talked.
could be theoretically more strategic potentially with that and help adjacent property owners try to protect that value a little bit.
Yeah, we talked about that, and one of the items at hand is when you're in rezoning, what this intention was to facilitate development, give the developers a certain degree of flexibility on it as well. And from our standpoint, to rezone property, you have to have a legal description to be able to do it. And so as part of the dilemma, you're almost forced to go through the planning process, get a legal, then come back and rezone lots. And when you look at facilitated development on it, from the city standpoint, housing is a key need in our community. We've heard that repeatedly. And so we are looking at ways to give the developer flexibility with the realization. This is one stage in the development process. There will be others to address some of the issues that have been mentioned tonight, we feel.
Could we ask the developers to replot it, to include in their, the gist of their plan to be able to renew, or just be able to do R1A, the selection? I want more of a commitment than just, here's a phone number.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Trust us is going to look at it.
this is a rezoning application, so there's a development agreement that has to happen from here until then, that we could address those things. This is simply a rezoning that then we can address in the development agreement, that kind of issue. Because what Mike was saying is that it actually has to be a legal zoning, so you can't just say this area. It actually has to be platted.
And that's very good. And we also talked about, too, from our standpoint, as far as concept plans, and the dilemma with doing concept plans at the zoning levels, we do those and they're technically tied to planned unit development, such as Prairie Ridge. That forces the developer to go through and do most of the engineering on the site. And the reason is if there's any changes to the concept plan to that, if the development changes such as stormwater management forces a realignment of streets or whatever could happen through the subdivision process, if it forces a change in your concept plans tied to the rezoning, there's a chance you'd have to go back and rezone the property again, which causes further delays with the development. In our standpoint, we realize there's going to be several associated development actions associated with the development. We thought, from a planning standpoint, trying to facilitate housing within the community, we'd be able to address those in various stages, as Councilman Hopkins alluded to.
But I think, I'm not trying to be difficult. I think it's already R1. They could easily answer the housing issue. So I think it's more just trying to control as best we can values of existing citizens, and yet still thought, because I understand the multi-family thing helps the development go. It can be a neat way to develop a community. It can answer the 55 and older. It can answer the young family need. I get all this. But I think there could be a compromise. And there is going to be an element of potentially trusting the process for some of the neighbors as well. But I appreciate you all sharing your comments, and I think it will work out well. That's my suspicion.
Is the public hearing still?
Yeah, we're still in public hearing. Yep.
Well, we all need to make informed decisions, and I see it happening here, getting involved with the neighbors. I think there needs to be a little bit more information. We need to have a plan so the neighbors can look at it, you can look at it and decide And if this was tabled without making a decision that you can't go back on, at least everyone would have all the information they need to make the decision. A project like this, I can't imagine there aren't some drawings somewhere that they could present. And, it may not be exact, but at least something that we can see, you can see, and to make an informed decision. That's the only comment I want to make.
Okay.
Question to Mike, if the Fountain View extension, it seems to be the one most unfavorable, from the west to the east. Does eminent domain have to take place to get that done today or not?
That question, I don't mean to dodge the answer to that.
No, that's fine.
But let's just say, assuming in answering the question, if you we're trying to build a city-initiated project to the west, what we would start out with, if it was city staff that was doing it, is we tried to negotiate with the property owner for using that, and eminent domain would only be considered as a last resort if the street needed to be built on it. So there'd be a negotiation phase on any type of city-initiated street project on that before eminent domain was considered. No, hope I answered.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if there'd been any verbal agreement, say, yeah, you can have a road go through my property, or I'll sell you for a road.
No, I do remember when we redid our comp plan, this was back mid 2014, 2015, there was a considerable amount, it might have even been the one before that, considerable amount of discussion on the properties to the west. And keep in mind, the comp plan is a guide that simply indicates a general, as the property develops through, it is suggested that there needs to be a future west connection on that as well. There's various options. There's the one that's shown in the comp plan. There is other options considered as well. So.
And I guess the other comment I made on the attachments too, I was just looking at a couple in Boss Landon, 1,727 square feet, built in 2020. Each one sold for $355,000. I think people are nuts, but if that's the market, that's
not a entry level property.
No, right.
At least it wasn't for me when I grew up.
I'm no devout. I just have concern about the kids. So you put in a sidewalk, and they generally go on one side of the street only. At least in my neighborhood they did. And kids cross from one side to the other. If you've got construction vehicles going down there, somebody's going to get hit. If you're using construction vehicles on Country Club Drive and North Hazel Street, there's going to be an accident.
Anything else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Brandon Horst Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Brader Horst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Motion passed. So now we move on to the ordinance number 1007, entitled An Ordinance Amending the Zoning Ordinance of the City of Pella, Iowa by conditionally amending the boundaries of the R1A district to include the property generally located north of the terminus of Country Club Drive and Hazel Street, and directing the zoning administrator to note the ordinance number and date of this change on the official zoning map, and this is the first reading. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support. Vanstra, Hopkins. Discussion?
I think the most important thing to keep in mind here is that this is simply a rezoning request. This is not, we're not signing off to 100 multifamily units. That process will happen down the road, where we will see the concepts, we'll see the layouts, the proposed layouts, and then we will actually be able to say, yeah, this works in respect to the neighborhood, or no, this doesn't work come up with a new plan. So today, we're not signing off on a townhome row or anything like that, simply rezoning. And based on what's there currently, it's an appropriate zoning. The hard work actually comes after this of coming up with a good site plan that then we can sign off on and say, this works for the neighborhood, this works for Pella.
So Mike, a question, just theoretically, if the first phase got done with 25 homes, you could say none other could be done until the road comes in? That could be a condition that we put in place?
Yeah, that's part of the subdivision.
Right.
Well, as far as, if you're talking about the west connection,
Yes,
until that is done, those types of conditions would be addressed during the subdivision phase.
Right.
Keep in mind, with the preliminary plat, this entire 108 acres would have a master plan on it that would be subject to some council approval.
But those are things that could be part of that
Yes.
broad discussion at that point?
Yes, and then that's perfectly appropriate during the preliminary plat. And then it's likely this type of development would be done in phases over time on it, where you have a phase 1 and a phase 2. Now, under the city requirements, front streets need to be extended to the property lines on there as well. So those types of issues, generally, we address them during the subdivision process, during the engineering phase of the project. So, but yeah, that type of condition, I guess, to answer your question as far as the west connection, that would be addressed during the preliminary project.
I echo what Dave said. This is the zoning or the rezoning stage, and there are 3 readings of this resolution. And the other thing that I think is important is a lot of times when there are projects like this, it's really helpful when the developers have public input meetings, and they'll come in with potential drawings, and they'll meet with the neighbors, and they'll take their input. And a lot of the projects that we've done, like we did that with the Webster School, and it really turns into a very good relationship building time for people. And oftentimes those meetings are held right here. So again, this is, as Dave said, this is just first vote on rezoning. There are 2 more. And then I would also encourage the second part, which would be a public information. Very helpful.
Okay, anything else? All right, so now we're going to vote on the motion to approve the ordinance number 1007. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Score?
Yes.
Vanderhorst?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Motion passed. All right, what, are you talking about the school project, is that, or what one are you?
It was about, like, just open comments at the beginning.
Oh, about an agenda item?
No?
Okay.
I guess I misunderstood.
I'm sorry, we have a public forum at the end, towards the end of the meeting for any other subject.
At the end,
The
okay,
first one
thanks.
is for agenda item.
Gotcha, thanks.
Okay. All right, another public hearing regarding small wireless facility antenna tower right-of-way siting and wireless facility design guidelines. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. And for those following at home, I'm on slide number 9. And tonight's public hearing, as Mayor DeWart stated, is for small wireless facilities. Now, a little bit of background. We did discuss this in November of last year, this particular ordinance. And essentially, the key terms of the ordinance are essentially the same as what we are discussing this evening. Now, when we talk about small wireless facilities, pictured up on the big board is an antenna system. And generally, what these are used to is to promote 4G and 5G technologies by cell companies on this. And in our particular case, our local vendors, US Cellular and Verizon, have expressed an interest in switching to this type of technology and view this type of tower and antenna as beneficial to aid in their project. It's also important to note there's been federal legislation on this matter as well that actually establishes the rules for cities to follow as far as allowing cell towers or small wireless facilities to operate in the public right-of-way. And that's what this particular ordinance is intended to address this evening. So, Mandy, I believe we've covered everything on slide number 1. Let's go ahead and explain what we have here. Now, as far as the agenda items that we have on tonight, we have 2 agenda items this evening. We have an ordinance that would add chapter ordinance 1008 that would add chapter 172 to the Pella City Code. What this would be be the ordinance that would govern cell towers or small wireless facilities and their operations within the public right-of-way. Now, it's important to note that the ordinance governs the pole locations, the parameters, the requirements for locating the pole. It also governs the use and ability to locate on existing utility poles as well. There's quite a bit of detail that's included with Chapter 172. We do have some brief overviews listed up on the big board as far as requirements on this as well. Equally important to note, when we talk about pole locations, these could be both small wireless facilities can be located on an existing utility pole if it will support the structure on it, and that decision is up to the City of Pella, or it could be a new pole inserted in the city's right-of-way. Now, we do have requirements in the ordinance that the poles have to look like similar to poles around them, as well as the key takeaway. In addition, what's being proposed with the design guidelines for small wireless facilities, we have a separate resolution that deals with, or a policy that deals with the design of poles that may be constructed within our right-of-way. The key takeaway on this, if you wanted to oversimplify things, any new pole will have to blend into the existing environment on it. So it needs to look like the existing utility poles around the area. And what we have is an example that's taken from the city's facility design policy requirements that we have that's associated with this ordinance. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. A little bit of more detail that we have on the ordinance that we're considering this evening. Spacing, it's important to note that the poles need to be, new poles need to be at least 15 feet away from residential and commercial buildings, and at least 300 feet away from existing small wireless facility poles as well. We have maximum height limitations as well for the poles on this. Now, as far as the department that will be overseeing this program for the City of Pella, it's a planning and zoning department as well. And in addition, we have the fees that are associated with the small wireless facilities as well. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the design guidelines are concerned for this ordinance, we have a resolution that actually adopts a new policy for the City of Pella. It deals with the guidelines that we will follow in approving new cell phone towers or antennas for small wireless facilities as well. And that is our design guidelines. And once again, we talked about both elements during our last November policy and planning meeting on this as well. Mandy, do we have any additional items on this? So in summary, Mr. Mayor, the ordinance that we're talking about this evening, ordinance 1008 would add chapter 172 to the city code, which would establish the ordinance and governance for placing poles in the city's right-of-way. Poles could either be privately owned, or the small wireless facilities could also be placed on existing utility poles as well. In addition, the resolution that we're considering this evening is the design guidelines for the poles. And basically, to oversimplify matters, what we're trying to do if there is a new pole placed within the city's right-of-way, or even if there is an existing wireless facility placed on an existing utility pole, we want it to blend in with the surrounding environment so it's not noticeable. And that's the overriding goal with the aesthetics portion of this. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes our presentation this evening. We'd be more than happy to answer questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any written comments?
No written comments.
Council, comments, questions? We had a pretty extensive policy and planning discussion about this a few months ago. So.
When you talk about maintaining the design, I heard you mention P&Z. Should the CDC be involved in this for making the aesthetics part? Because that's normally what they do.
CDC governs as far as any type of building additions, and from our standpoint, in looking at the design guidelines and in consultation with legal counsel, the thought was that it could be governed administratively for a new pool.
Rather than go.
Yeah, and the thought, again, the guidelines that we're going to be using for these small wireless facilities is they need to fit in with the existing environment. And we thought from this standpoint, we have a set of guidelines that we could follow, and so administrative approval with the thoughts. And then also when you look at both the federal and state legislation, that deals with by the time you have an application that comes in and the time this period that the city has to act on that application. We thought it was a good candidate for administrative approval rather than assigned to a committee. And the limited scope that it is, with the overriding assumption that it needs to blend in and look like the existing poles currently in place.
And then following up on that, does that also include the maintenance of it when the paint starts to fade? We can require it's time to paint?
Yeah, there's a section under this code, under our ordinance, and I don't have it offhand, but there's a requirement that the applicant needs to maintain the small wireless facility in there. And so what the specific language says is within 30 days of notified that pole needs maintenance, such i.e. painting, or if it's became dilapidated, other means, they need to have that repaired in there. And again, our overriding concern and the benchmark that we're going to be using for these new poles and wireless facilities is they need to blend in with the existing environment. So they have 30 days to comply with the city's orders to maintain their poles and bring them up to a state where it matches the surrounding poles.
Does the city have ultimate jurisdiction to say it fits in the guidelines, but we don't want that one?
I think in looking at the design guidelines, it's our intent to permit poles that match existing poles as much as possible and work with the providers.
More location-based, I think, than aesthetically. Like, okay, that one just doesn't work. It blocks the windmill.
Yeah, I think, Jerry, there's, under our ordinance, there's design, and there's locations where the poles can and cannot be placed. And maybe if you want to give just a brief summary for those as well.
Correct, there are criteria for the poles are in place. The Federal Communications Commission in Iowa State have passed very stringent laws regarding this, giving rights to the telecommunications company. We have the ability to express our wishes, but ultimately we can put in the wants and wishes and set some aesthetics, but the reality is they're given parameter and they have to work within the parameters. We're given parameters that allow the slight modification. So this is really a balancing act between telecommunications companies and the city. So we have spacing requirements. We don't want to group them together. And the concept with small cell wireless is that like large cell towers now, we have a couple on the outside of town that covers the whole town. 5G, 4G work within a 300-foot, 400-foot radius, so you have a multitude of spacing. So the idea is that these can't be cluttered next to each other. They can't be adjacent to a city park. They can't be adjacent to residential. We spec them for industrial primarily, then into commercial, and then with special acceptance by the city council, if they can't get coverage but next to a residential area, you guys can give them permission to do that. So there are these criteria. The design guidelines are suggestions. Again, we cannot usurp state law. Okay? State law dictates this, but they're suggestions, and most of the telecommunications companies want these to look good because they do reference that brand that are right here. So we have some of the guidelines. They're very sleek. We'll have them all painted black to mimic the existing poles that are black in the downtown area. As we progress out to the periphery of the city, we go to a stainless or a aluminum type pole. They would then match that. So we do have this criteria to work with the telecom companies to site them where they need to be and can make suggestions to move them. And with ultimate overriding, the council could ultimately approve if they don't agree with staff and they want to override us. So there's a good check and balance for this.
Right, and then the opposite of that, say, the hollow out by the back end of Boss where coverage is terrible. Can we say, move that one there and paint it whatever color you want? I mean, can we get that kind of authority over that as well?
That's a service.
Well, I think that Dr. Carl Stone, I would just say I'd be a little bit skeptical of telling them to paint it any color they want to.
I'm for the arts.
I think the overall intent of the ordinance is there are firm federal and state laws in place for telecommunication providers on this as far as poles. We have a certain amount of discretion under there, and I think the intent of it is to work together to have a good product. Our intent is to make the poles match what's in the existing areas so they're not noticeable in small wireless facilities. And so I'm looking at where the pole locations are and suggestions by staff. If we feel it may be too close to a residential house or other requirements, we may have some discretion to move those poles, but by and large, the intent is to work with the cell companies to provide coverage areas for our community.
I hate dropping calls in that building.
All right, anything else, council? Anyone out there want to comment on this?
My name's Erin Waits. I'm actually from U.S. Cellular. I've had the pleasure of working with Jerry since July. I just wanted to share a few remarks. Mr. Mayor, City Council, and City staff, thanks for the opportunity. U.S. Cellular makes a lot of investments into Iowa, and I won't talk about the specifics, but this is a really important community to us. And specifically, what I wanted to touch on is that as America's locally grown wireless carrier, we really value our partnerships with our local communities. And in that spirit, we have really tried to partner with the City of Pella. We are currently proposing 15 small wireless facilities with our objective to improve and enhance our connectivity for residents, visitors, and businesses. We respect and honor the city's Dutch heritage and recognize the need to provide better coverage and capacity for the community. These improvements will provide enhancement to daily wireless user experience and provide new network support during events such as the Tulip Festival. Each year during the Tulip Festival, U.S. Cellular deploys Colts. These proposed wireless facilities will actually be a permanent solution and add capacity and coverage with minimal visual impacts that are permanent for the city. We intend to deploy small wireless facilities in a respectful manner that accounts for the city's unique and historic landscape with respect to the aesthetic guidelines. And actually the first slide that Mr. Nardini went over was a pole that U.S. Cellular has deployed in Oklahoma City that we had shared with the city. With all this being said, our biggest concern is that section 172.05, subsection 4, separation and clearance for new small wireless facilities, would make it difficult to deploy our proposed wireless facilities. We are unable to comply with the requirement that a small wireless facility be no closer than a distance equal to 15 feet to any residential or commercial building and no closer than 300 feet from any other small wireless facility. For example, in order to provide the adequate coverage and capacity improvements, we are proposing 4 small wireless facilities on the downtown Central Park Square. These sites have been selected to densify the network by adding adequate capacity so that we are able to distribute traffic. This is especially critical during the special events like the Tulip Festival. So we ask that the City of Pella reconsider that section as written to allow for us to meet the necessary capacity and coverage objectives. While I understand also that the city has created a most preferred to least preferred location preferences, we'd like to be upfront and let the city know it's not technically feasible for us to follow. Our proposed sites have all been selected based on a network coverage and capacity need to better serve our customers and our community. We don't do anything speculatively. I additionally have some written comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions regarding our proposal. Thank you all for your time.
I assume these items were discussed in the creating the ordinance, or?
Jerry, when you worked with the city attorney, it's my understanding a majority of the ordinance was taken from state law. Is that correct? As far as
Again, the ordinance allows the applicant to petition the city council for cases where they technologically or under feasibly cannot get cell signal. So in this case, if the applicant, U.S. Cellular, states, we need these poles in this location, they have the right to go to city council, prepare a presentation, and have you authorize that location. The intent of the ordinance as written is to get these as blended, or not hidden, but blended into certain areas of the community. Understanding the feasibility may not exist, or the technology may not exist to allow that to happen. There is a parameter in the ordinance to allow the applicant to come before the city council and plead their case, and hope that you give them, resolution.
So in those cases, this example, if they were not able to place all their poles in those cases, they could petition the city council for placement of the poles near Central Park, correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Did somebody else want to say something about it?
Yeah, Helena Hayes, and I didn't know this was going to be on the agenda or anything tonight, but so clarify, this is 5G.
Correct.
Have you considered some of the very serious dangers that have been discussed regarding 5G? Is it a millimeter wave? What's the frequency on these? And why do they have to be placed a certain amount away from parks and residences?
Will you answer?
Yeah.
In the aesthetics, strictly aesthetics. The main reason for parks like West Market Park, the Central Park, is that we class these as very desirable areas of Pella, and we restrict what they look like to a T. So to less clutter in the public right-of-way is better for our perceived vision of these parks. Nothing to do with safety. That's not an issue we've discussed. It's basically an aesthetic issue for us.
So what is the frequencies on them?
I would have to defer to U.S. Cellular to answer that.
You can fly below the FCC's limits.
Which is,
I'm not an RF engineer and I'm not here to speak about that. I'm happy to submit an answer to that to the mayor and the staff.
And Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, but the federal and state legislation covers both 4G and 5G with the small wireless facilities. So questions such as frequency, that's really an address at the state and federal issue. Where the locals are at is concerned about the placement of the poles in our program for placing and accommodating the technology, correct?
Absolutely correct. The Federal Communications Commission has granted communication companies in the United States very broad rights. Each state subsequently then adopted their own laws, but basically took those same rights and allowed them at a local level. Our job here, being usurped by federal and state law, is really the location and the aesthetics, and that's about it. That's what we're allowed to do under law.
Okay.
well, I would suggest that you consider that because there has been a lot of research done on 5G and just some of the dangers of that. So just, I would suggest that the council take a look at that because I know it's the move, it's the way of the future, and yet just like some of the concerns that were brought up with the neighborhoods and that safety, I would just like Pellet to consider the safety of that. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Horst, Banster, any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Horst.
Yes.
Banstra.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, moving on to the ordinance number 1008, entitled an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Pella, Iowa by adding Chapter 172 pertaining to small wireless facility antenna tower right-of-way siting. First reading. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Banster, Hopkins, discussion.
I'll just go back to Jerry. On this, the way I understand it, you have drafted the ordinance to give the city the maximum rights possible without superseding federal and state code.
That is correct, and I'm required to put in the provision for U.S. Cellular to appeal to you directly. So it has maximum potential for both.
Okay. I don't want to say your hands were tied, but you had a pathway to follow on this ordinance.
We have a very limited window to work with.
Okay, that's what I was reading between the lines.
Anything else? Okay, all, motion for approval of the ordinance. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Banstra.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Horst.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed.
And I am going to, since all the Pella's maximum protections there, I'm going to ask that the statute to be waived and we pass the ordinance without any further readings.
Is there support for that?
Support.
Okay, Banstra, Spore, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Banstra.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Horst.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Motion passed. So I need a motion for approval or approval of the adoption of ordinance number 1008.
So move to adopt.
Hopkins,
Support.
Banstra.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Banstra.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Horst.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, now moving on to resolution number 6403, entitled a resolution approving the City of Pella small wireless facility design guidelines. I assume you've given us all the info, right?
Yes, sir.
Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Brander, Horace, Hopkins, any discussion? All those in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, moving on, resolution number 6404, entitled Resolution Approving Community Services Fees. Mike?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. For those following at home, I'm on slide number 14 this evening. And if council may recall, we did discuss aquatic center fees at our recent budget discussions that were conducted last week. What this resolution would do would adopt the fees that we did discuss during the city's budget hearings that we conducted, or budget meetings that we did discuss. We have highlights of the proposed adjustments up there listed on the big board in this, along with a picture of the city's current aquatic facility. But based on our research, we are proposing an individual and an adult fee be increased from $7 to $9. Staff from the Community Services Department is also proposing an additional $5 specialty rate. And the areas under purview of this new rate are listed up here on the big board. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. In addition, you can see the various proposals that we do have for the summer aquatic passes as well as a ticket note as well. Now, we want to make sure that this was, and I believe Jeanette, correct me, Jeanette, Alex, this was discussed by the Community Services Board as a part of the budget process and was reviewed as well on as far as the fees. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes our presentation this evening. Be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
All right, can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Brander, Horace, Hopkins, any discussion?
Seems like basically everything is going up in price.
Well, the hourly rate alone, we're gonna have to pay for its help is gonna raise costs significantly. Anything else? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 6405, entitled Resolution Approving Ordering the Preparation of Plans and Specifications, Form of Contract, Notice of Public Hearing and Notice of Letting, setting date for public hearing, authorizing the taking of bids and authorizing bid opening for the University Street and A Street reconstruction project. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As the Mayor DeWard stated, what we're talking about here is the proposed University Street reconstruction project along with the East 8th reconstruction project. The geographical area that we're proposing for the road improvements this year are the red highlighted areas up there. As far as the general sense, as far as the University Street reconstruction, the reroute of University Street, it generally follows the alignment that is being proposed up here on the big board as well. Now, the key takeaway that we have in tonight's presentation, what we're really doing is authorizing staff to establish April 5th as the public hearing date. You're also authorizing staff to solicit bids for the project. We do have a description of what the reconstruction project would entail listed up on the big board. The opinion of probable cost for the construction is just shy of $920,000. Council were to approve this resolution this evening. We hold a bid letting of the project on the 24th of this month. Council would formally consider the bids on April 5th. And we'd be looking to issue, if council would proceed at that public hearing with the construction contract, we would proceed with the notice to proceed on May 9th. Final completion is scheduled for 90 working days. And as we discussed during the budget meetings, what our hope would be is to have East 8th Street completed before school starts in the fall. University Street is quite possible may take a little bit longer than the school deadline date as well. But the goal is certainly to accelerate this project. As far as the transfer agreement, the school district will be responsible for the removal of the Caldwell tennis court projects, and they have deadlines where they need to take care of that as well. So with that, Mr. Mayor, once again, all we're really doing is establishing April 5th as the public hearing date for these two proposed street reconstruction projects.
All right, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Brander, Horace, Hopkins, any discussion?
Hey, Denny, on University, is there still a jog in that? It looks like on the east end.
Yeah, and it's actually a little more, there's still gonna be a little bit of an S curve in that east end. This drawing makes it a little straighter than it actually would be.
Why?
We didn't have the plat of surveyor on our.
Why the jog? Why not make it a straight shot?
Otherwise, you're absorbing all of that needed curve or misalignment in an intersection, and it didn't meet AASHTO standards.
Gotcha. You end up It's kind of
Yeah,
kitty
so
wampus.
Jack had
kinda-
to design
yeah.
it still to curve in the street and not all of it in one intersection.
I follow.
Within 30 feet.
I got you.
Yeah, there it is.
That
See,
makes-
that's the actual curve it'll be.
That makes sense.
Thanks, Mandy. Which is much calmer than what's in.
Well, I had citizens, or I was approached about that, straightening that street from a safety standpoint of the school. Right there, you know, if it's a straight shot, you get a chance, but there's a stop sign there too, so I think the S in the stop sign will alleviate that issue. You know, there was concern about straight streets traffic tends to speed up quite a bit. So.
Yeah.
But I think there's plenty of buffer there to not have to worry about that.
I just know that this means two years straight, I'll have road construction that affects my family's drive on a daily basis. These when school.
Well, if you're looking for sympathy, we're not.
Yeah, totally.
And I would also like to add, Mr. Mayor, this is one of our high-profile projects this year, but keep in mind, we just approved, or we will be approving a budget hopefully on March 15th that has $4 million worth of street improvements. So street reconstruction and street projects will be a familiar theme in Pella this year, and at least we're planning on it.
The other good news on this one, nobody will be walking in and out of their homes at night like we do other projects. So that's a plus.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Okay, we'll vote on the motion for approval. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Banstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 6406, entitled Resolution approving change order number 4 with WRH Inc. for the wastewater treatment plant 2019 upgrades. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As Mayor DeWard stated, we are entertaining change order number 4 for our wastewater treatment plant upgrades. And overall, when we talk about the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, this is a significant project for the City of Pella. And it is intended to meet DNR mandates for treatment mandates, but it's also intended to extend the life of the sanitary or the wastewater treatment plant by 20 years as well. The change order that we're considering tonight is for $1,508.92. We have listed up on the big board a summary of the various items that constitute this change order. Mandy, if you could please proceed. So we started off with an original contract of $5,998,000 for this project, construction project. If the council were to approve this deduction this evening, we would have an updated or revised contract amount of $6,055,211.91. And Mr. Mayor, we are recommending approval of the change order this evening as submitted. So with that, we'd be more than happy to explain this item or entertain any questions the mayor or council may have on this item.
All right, can I get a motion for approval? Hopkins, Spore, any discussion?
When's the final date it's expected to be completed by?
It's actually well past us, you know, with COVID, it was back, I believe, November 1st, I think was the final. A lot of what's left now is a few punch list items and some things that need warm weather.
Okay.
Seating, some additional tuck pointing, some outside concrete work. So we're actually meeting all the new permit requirements, everything's in operation. So it's just a laundry list of cleanup items, so. Appreciate you asking, because COVID really messed this up on the beginning, you know, getting started, too, we can clear back. And materials are just ridiculous. So they've done well with that said. And while we could have let this clean up to the end, but while they were friendly with all the decreases, it's like, let's get this signed and approved.
Okay, anything else? All right, we'll vote on the motion for approval of the resolution. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Banstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 6407, entitled Resolution Accepting the Public Improvements for the Pella Municipal Airport AWAS Replacement Project. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As Mayor DeWard stated, we're talking about this evening, or with this resolution, we do rather would accept the public improvements for the automated weather observing system, commonly referred to as the AWAS system at the Pella Municipal Airport. It's important to note the contract award was $168,630. No change orders were necessary, and we actually have a picture of the AWA system at the Pella Municipal Airport as well. The engineer for the project believes the project was completed in accordance with plans and specifications and is recommending acceptance this evening. Staff is also in agreement with the engineer's opinion on the project as well. Now, as far as funding for the project, it is important to note that the FAA has provided $150,000 of marked entitlement funds for this project. So our share of that would be approximately 10% of the total project cost. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I believe that concludes our presentation this evening. Mandy, I assume we're not at any additional slides? Okay, very well. Then that concludes our presentation this evening, Mr. Mayor. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
Thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support. Mansfield Hopkins, discussion. System's up and running and working well?
Actually up and running. FAA has inspected it, certified it, and put it online. So we're just finishing up the paperwork because on FAA, on the entitlement money, it's always in arrears. So this will allow us now to apply for the grant to get the 90% back.
Okay. All right, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Reindeerhorst?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 6408 entitled Resolution Approving Change Order Number 1, Final Quantity Adjustment and Miscellaneous Items and Accepting the Public Improvements for the Oostport Alley Sewer Storm and Paving Project. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. For those following at home, I'm on slide number 20. As Mayor DeWart stated, this resolution approves change order number 1 and also accepts the improvements for the Oostport alleyway improvement projects that we have listed. Now, this alleyway is commonly the alleyway that's located between infills, and I call it, and please excuse me for not identifying the current use, but it's the former Strawbers building as well. And you do see a picture up on the big board.
Funky.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's nice of us, right? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. We do have a picture up on the big board, but by and large, the most visible portion of this project is we took the asphalt alleyway, we reconstructed it into a brick paved alleyway on it as well. In addition, there was sanitary sewer work along with significant stormwater detention that was installed under the parking lot at East First and Washington Street. In addition, we paved the entire parking lot as well. So it's a very nice improvement to the city system or street network that we have. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. No, overall, the final quantities adjustment that we're talking about, we had really 2 items that constitute this adjustment. So the contract amount or change order that we are considering this evening is just below a deduction of $16,000 to the final contract amount. And we started off with this project with an original contract of $940,854. Change order number 1 is a deduction of just shy of $16,000. If approved by council, the final contract amount would be $924,890.05. Now, Garden and Associates was the engineer on the project. They are recommending approval of this resolution, which would formally accept the improvements as well. And staff is once again in agreement with the engineer's recommendation. And I believe that concludes our presentation this evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm more than happy to answer the questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
All right, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
Support.
Hopkins for discussion.
Only thing, it's kind of a failure of me as a city council not to train Mike. It should be Oostport instead of Oostport.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Well, I said Oostport.
I know you learned from him.
That's why we got you here for those Dutch things. All right. Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Reindeerhorst?
Yes.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, abstracts of bills number 2098. Can I get a motion for approval?
Move to approve and issue warrants.
Reindeerhorst?
Support.
Hopkins. Any discussions or questions? All right, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Motion passed. All right, council, any other business anybody needs to bring before us tonight? All right, any members of the public have any other business that you'd like to address? If so, please come forward, state your name and address, and work very hard to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
name is Mary Ellen Butler. I live at 406 Franklin. My remarks are going to be regarding.
I don't think he meant to do that.
No, he's a nice guy, I know him. Regarding the book Genderqueer in our library. The saddest repercussion of genderqueer being in our library is the damage it can inflict on young minds. Young minds need guidance, not pornography. The other aspect of this struggle, to me, is hearing God's word misused. We've been referenced to the judge not verse more than once. That verse does not prohibit all types of judging. There is a righteous kind of judgment we all are called to exercise with careful discernment. Do we not live our lives by judging? Life is a series of decisions and choices. The love verses in the Bible, we all welcome them. God is love. But there are things that God hates, and he tells us what they are. It would be a good word study for all of us to discover what God hates. He tells us. The American Library Association has been the subject of discussion here more than once. Did you know that the ALA endorses drag queen story hours in public libraries? These are geared towards young children. They endorse, the ALA endorses and educates people, librarians, on how to organize such events and also arms them on how to meet community objections to such events. And that last phrase is similar to an article written by our librarian on how to answer a book challenge in your community. The ALA is armed and arming its members. There is an agenda. The organization in Pella called Protect My Innocence has an agenda also. Which one will you support? Should we brace ourselves for drag queen story hour at the Pella Public Library? They are already happening in other Iowa public libraries. Ted Bundy was a serial killer during the 70s. He spent many years in prison, and he said that he never met a violent offender who was not a consumer of pornography. Hours before he was executed, he said, "Society has a right to protect itself. Society has a right to protect itself. We have a right and a duty to protect our culture, our town, our children." Thank you for listening.
I'm enjoying plantar fasciitis.
Doesn't sound fun.
It's getting better. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, 2 weeks ago after the last City Council meeting, Mark DeYoung challenged me to do some research to find a law that enforced morality. I'm sorry he's not here this evening. I'm going to have to send him what I've learned. First, all I can think of is the Prohibition Law, which we all know is an abject failure because it was a law about morality, not drinking. But then it came to me that we do have laws that enforce morality, laws that have penalties attached, like do not steal, do not kill, do not bear false witness, or commit perjury. I think the real follow-up question should be, what happens when the morality of society breaks down? Societies have a life cycle, There's freedom from bondage. We saw that in our American Revolution. We had liberty, which leads to great accomplishments. We've seen that over the last 200, almost 250 years. We have an abundance of riches. This is a very rich country, but it tends to lead us away from our religious and moral framework. And then we see that there's a certain amount of greed and selfishness that leads to laziness. Complacency and short-sightedness leads to apathy. And there's a manipulation of the system which leads to dependence reinstated. We see that in the welfare state. As the government weakens, we finally see it collapse and leads back to bondage. What are some examples of fallen civilizations? Well, there's many. The Hittites, the Babylonian Empire, the Egyptians, the Greece, Rome, all kind of familiar with Rome, Persia, the Mayan, the Incas. Modern examples probably include the Russian Romanov dynasty, which was immoral. More recently, Nazi Germany committed morality on an industrial scale, and they got away with it for a long time. They cost more people died in the World War II event than we can even imagine. The Soviet Union collapsed somewhat because of immorality, corruption. China's on that same path, I believe. They are harvesting body parts. They are persecuting certain religious groups. So what are the signs of moral breakdown? Carnal indulgences, obsession with sex and violence. These are slow and subtle changes. Excessive materialism, devaluation of human life, abortion. Governmental corruption, lack of trust in government. I don't trust the CDC anymore at all, for anything. Overspending by both public entities and private debt. We're $30 trillion in debt. And that's just what they can report. We've turned away from organized religion. We've actually turned away from God. Just as an example, Greece presents us an interesting example. At first, the country had a single religion and strict moral code. Self-sacrifice was encouraged and homosexuality was a capital offense. As Greece experienced success, immigrants poured in, and the rich took advantage of plentiful, cheap labor. Is that going on? Power migrated from the middle class to the rich. We hear about that too. The middle class is shrinking. A decline in morality and virtue began to spread with the loss of respect for discipline. Music of the youth became wild and vulgar. I know my parents couldn't understand the Beatles, but I could. But I can't understand anything today that comes out this stuff. Homosexuality became acceptable and gradually progressed to pedophilia. Disregard for human life was embraced and slavery was introduced. Soon it was a rite of passage in Greece for every male to kill a slave. Can you imagine that? Greece went down, Rome went up. Greece was subjugated. Rome was to repeat the same progression with even greater degrees of decadence. And I'm not going to go into those. So where are we headed? Are we going to hold the line or get into it? Mr. Mayor, you say that you cannot do anything about the library and its policies. I think you have influence. You have the bully pulpit. Remember Teddy Roosevelt? He had the bully pulpit. It's time to exercise a little influence. Thank you.
Keith Oxberg and 224 South Street. I want to build off of what the butler said. Morality, drag queens. I don't know about you guys, but are you starting to wonder about our library director? A book is asked. It's number 10,000 on the Barnes & Noble list. It's number 4,000 on Amazon. And she rejects other books.
We're not going to listen to disparaging any people here. If you have an opinion and want to tell us about something, please do it. But leave people out of it. That's not what this is about.
Right.
If we can't discipline ourselves enough, we will cease having these comments. If you want to talk about a subject and give us your opinion, you're more than welcome. But leave people alone.
I respect that. Sorry. try here. Some of the things coming out of our library are not good. We all know it wouldn't take much to bring a drag queen in here, would it? Or what are you guys going to do when that happens? So, we were told by the library that the parents need to watch their children. Maybe the citizens, through the council, need to watch the library. Their own words. I guess what I'm trying to do is encourage you guys to take some actions and control. Things are getting out of hand here. We got a museum uptown for the founder of this town. It's a church. And then on the other side of town, we have this library with porn in it. How do you guys mix that? 175 years coming up this year. Are we going to lose that in the 2020s? I have the opportunity at Premier Manufacturing to just about see every worker on the floor and communicate with them. I'm getting asked, so what's the city doing? What do I tell them? It's been about a year now since the pool incident. What do I tell them? Do I tell them nothing's happened? Do I tell them they're ignoring it? Pella's been on the national news already. What do you think? How do we look around southern Iowa? Do we look like the city of Tulip Time? Or do we look like the city that's got porn in it? Are people coming? Are we doing anything? You know, I get on the floor, and Liz, your name's brought up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring names. But names are brought up, and they ask, what are they doing? Give me something. Give me something I can go back and say, you know, I'm really proud of our town. We have taken a stand. So far, I can't say that. I want to say that. We were founded by a preacher who founded this town. What's going to lose this town? You know, what do I tell people? What do you tell people when they ask you? Are you working on it? I can't say that because we don't know. You've given us nothing. So looks at me. You know, Carl Stone, I really appreciate your questions last meeting. You asked the same question 3 times. I don't think anybody understood the answer. Maybe we need to take control and, you know, put some people in there where we can get some answers. I really think, you know, you need to take control of the situation and give the people an answer. What are we going to tell them? Like I said, you know, I see 2,000 guys on the floor. A lot of them are not from Pella. They're from around this area. They laugh at me. Give me something to tell them. Thank you.
I feel better holding it and trying to slouch. Hi, my name is Michelle Warren. I live at 655 210th Avenue. I'm also very concerned with what's going on in our public library. It's not just a problem that's here in Pella. This is a nationwide issue that's occurring. Mr. Mayor, I respectfully do not agree with you mentioning how we should not point out certain people. I'm seeing a pattern here that's developing through our library. This pattern involves purchasing materials that are addressed to juveniles. These materials are very pornographic, pedophilic. These are our children. This is not dollar figures. This is not putting sidewalks in. This is not building houses. This is protecting the innocence of our children. Now, I have done some digging into what we have at our library, and right now I can tell you that there are 10 books that are shelved in the juvenile section that all have sexual content, and some of it is so explicit that adults are even feeling uncomfortable reading it. And this is directed towards our children. And the person responsible is a person, Mr. Mayor, and she needs to be held accountable.
I said in this context and in these discussions, we're not talking about individuals. If you have a problem with any city employee, you can make a complaint or whatever you want to do through the city hall. But this forum is for you guys to give, it's not a question and answer session. You give us your opinion on a subject that you think is that the city should be concerned about. And I'm telling you, I'm going to stop them if we can't respect that.
Okay.
If you have a problem with an employee, there's a way to do that, but this isn't it. That's all I'm saying. That's it. I'm not saying anything else.
I think my bigger problem is the content of material that's being allowed to be distributed to our kids. Before this meeting tonight, I actually went through some of these books and it made me sick. And I was going to bring excerpts that were in this book, but for the love of God, I didn't want to be saying them in public. We have teachers okay with this type of material being shared with our kids. We have a serious problem here, and I really, really hate to see it get brushed off. We have an American Library Association that seems to be okay with distribution of these types of materials to our kids. We have a member on our city council board here who's also okay with distributing pornography amongst our children, saying that a community can benefit from it. I don't see that. There's another concern I have outside of the library issue. It's with regards to these wireless towers for 5G. Mr. Banster, you had mentioned that they are following CDC guidelines.
FCC.
I think I heard you say CDC too.
That was the community development,
But
the design.
we had a public forum for that, so you had an opportunity then to talk about wireless towers.
Well, I want you all to know that the CDC right now is currently being sued.
I think you've got the wrong CDC. I was
Okay.
the community development, the committee that's here.
Thank you
Yeah.
for
That-
because
Yeah.
that CDC is very corrupt, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want our
No,
city to be
it's
influenced
the
by that.
committee for design here.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you for letting me speak tonight too. Oh, one more thing. I've been up at the state capitol attending subcommittee meetings during session this year, and there's a general consensus going on within our state that is targeting the same issue we're having with our library. It's happening around our state. So we're not the only city dealing with this, with the materials that are being distributed to our kids. So I'd like you all to know that. And if you could please keep an ear out for it, because there are some laws that have been drafted and they're in litigation right now addressing some of these moral issues. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
My name is Karma Ruffin. I live at 300 West 5th Street, and the book is an issue, and we're not hearing any more about compromising. And all we're asking is, it has nothing to do with the transgender part. It's the pictures that are in it. We have said that we're not against people that aren't sure what they want to be. It's their choice. We may not agree with it. We all have it in families. But it's the pictures. And they're filthy. And as being with our Dutch community, Christian community, that is not Christianity, having that in the library. If it could just be, since it doesn't seem to be resolving, just put the book behind the counter. That's a simple request. And you are our government body of our town. And you should be able to act on making a decision, like you made decisions tonight about money and all that stuff, like they mentioned. You know, why can't you just make a decision now instead of this repeat at every meeting? Do something. Get the guts to do something. Thank you.
Helena Hayes, and I'm always your voice from out of town that wants to remind you how much other communities love Pella. They love coming here to enjoy your public facilities, your events. Just a wonderful, wonderful town to raise a family. I mentioned last time I came to Pella to go to Central College and met and married my husband and have been here for almost 30 years. And we chose to stay here because I'm from Western Iowa, and we did not want to move back there because of the opportunities here. So with that, I was reminded tonight of one of the things that was said by Michelle, that it is not just your problem. It is all over the state. I want to mention 3 bills that are in the House right now that are being considered for public schools. One of the bills is the transparency bill that will require all public schools to be very forthright in the list of books they have, who's coming into the classroom, speakers that they've invited, any health things that have been done with the children, of course, any meetings, any access to information for the children. There's also another bill called Chapman's bill, and of course that's by Senate President Jake Chapman. And his particular bill is actually in regards to the penalties for school teachers and staff that expose, harm any children regarding pornographic material and videos and things like that. And there's one other bill, help me out here.
It's the gender boys playing in girls sports.
Oh, well, yeah, that one too, which actually is probably going to pass the Senate tomorrow. She's talking about the Protecting Women's Sports bill. It has passed subcommittee, it has passed committee with flying colors, it has passed the House with flying colors, and tomorrow it will probably pass the Senate. The governor will probably sign off on it on Thursday. And so this will protect girls' sports from being inundated with biological males and keeping a fair playing game there. So that's another great thing that our that our legislature is doing right now. So I love your guys' call to action that, Keith, we need to know what Pella is going to do about this, because unfortunately, it's not going to go away, and if you continue to move the line back, it's just going to continue to get worse, and we're asking you to draw that line and protect the innocence of your little children, not just the physical safety on the streets, but also what is put before their eyes and what is called upon for them to be exposed to. Thank you very much for your guys' service. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate being heard.
All right, this time we will adjourn to policy and planning with the CVB. Ann is here. And floor is yours.
Okay, Rob is going to start us off.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, residents of Pella, all of whom are stakeholders in Visit Pella and the CVB. We've done a little bit of rebranding there. CVB, meaning the Convention and Visitors Bureau, was one of those acronyms that wasn't very well understood, but everybody knows what Visit Pella is. And with a change in leadership with Ann Frost, we are excited about the future. You'll recognize some familiar names on this list of our board, which represent corporate Pella, represent the college, represents Pella Historical. We're well integrated into the community. You may have just seen one of our new members, Mike Roederer. He just slipped out a little bit ago, representing Liberty Street Kitchen, and he is making delicious food for us right now. The other one, Brad Ainsworth, is the manager of the new Grand Stay Hotel out at Boss Landon across the way. So this list of people here, we hope that you're convinced that there's a steady hand on the tiller as we go forward into our next contract period. It's also a good time to thank you for that $70,000 inject that we got into our budget after COVID hit us hard. That allowed us to retain the talents of Stephanie Van Wyk, who's in our audience there, as well as add the smiling face of Sherry Westerkamp. So some folks think that might be misspelled and it should be cheery, with the smile that she brings to Pella Public. We're glad that we're able to bring her on board as well. With Ann, she's going to run you through the slides of what we have in store for you coming up in our next contract period. And then now that I've dialed up, I'll sign off as well. Okay. So Ann Frost, our new President Biden is delivering the State of the Union tonight. Ann is delivering her first State of Visit Pella.
Yeah, I'm sure more people are tuning into this than I. So a little funny thing about Sherry, everywhere I go, I'm always like, do you know Sherry Westerkamp? And everybody always says, yes, we know Sherry. So she's a great asset to our team. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council, for allowing me this time to give you some updates about what we are going to be doing at the Visit Pella organization and what we have planned for the next year and then the next 3 years with the funding that hopefully we will continue to provide and maybe increase. When you're ready to travel, the wonders of Pella await you. Isn't that what you think when you go on vacation? The wonders of Pella. So, or at least a long weekend, right? People can come here. In Pella, we literally have it all. Open air adventures at the Glockenspiel and Mollengrat Canal, recreation adventures at Lake Red Rock, boutique shopping, Dutch culture, al fresco dining with Dutch cuisine, historic attractions, educational experiences, flowers, hotels. It's a getaway everybody deserves. Pella is the perfect destination thanks to our strong community and the support of City Council to ensure an unforgettable getaway for anybody who wants to travel here. So how do we do this? By creating a destination experience of people and culture. Thank you, Mandy. So to create a destination experience, we need to market. So most of our extra ask from you will be for marketing. We want to target our audience. Marketing is key to get people's attention to spend their time in Pella. When Visit Pella creates an ad, whether on social media, print, or digital, we need to focus on who are we directing that ad to, what is the experience that they will receive, how will they share that experience, and will they come back and tell others. We need to be handy and use technology. Can we market and have our information to them in an easy-to-use form? We have created, and they're in your visitor's guide, some QR codes. One is for the visitor's guide, and then one is for city maps. And you guys can use that later when you're at home. You can scan them to make sure that they work. But we can have these QR codes at hotels and at local shops for guests to download our guides and city maps in one easy step instead of having to try to find a visitor's guide somewhere. We can show off what we have and what is coming, what is the demand for a perfect vacation, shopping, arts, culture, education, history museum. Pella has everything. All of that and a lot more is awaiting for people right here in Pella. The only question is, what do people want to experience first? Okay. Next slide. So marketing helps make an economic impact on our community. Our ROI can be seen in the numbers on the slide for the state and for Pella. And it's in the billions for the state and the millions for Pella. A great way to generate revenue for our community is to have a guest spend the night. The typical family of 4 spends about $401 a day on vacation. That includes travel, hotel, lodging, food, recreation, and attractions. So if we can get people to come to Pella with our extra marketing dollars and our marketing in general, just think of the impact that will be on our community. Marion County actually collects 7% share of the state tourism dollars, which I think is a very good number considering there's 99 counties in the state. Visit Pella is directly related to helping promote the community and is responsible for some of this increase. For 2021, our second quarter hotel motel tax went actually up 22% from the year before, which was COVID, which was kind of remarkable because a lot of communities did not see an increase. So even through the pandemic, Visit Pella spent money wisely to let people know that it was safe to come, shop, enjoy our gardens, and enjoy our recreational atmosphere. We had a Stay and Play campaign last year, and it reminded people about Pella, along with the Marion County Shop Small Crawl. We also implemented the first annual Care Smart that happened in December, and surveying our local shops, they said they had almost numbers comparable to Tulip Time, so that was great to hear that. So the next slide is marketing goals for 2022. This is kind of a breakdown. Over 70% of our budget in 2022 will go towards marketing. A majority of it will be visitor's guide, printed materials, next social media, audio, TV, digital, and then some trade shows. So to show you how we are going to, what we are going to do and have done already in 2022 is we're going to be strategic about placing ads in magazines. Most magazines are subscriptions and have very limited eyes, but we would like to go more digital and commercials because then we're able to have more viewers. Visit Pella is all about partnerships. Oh, sorry, Mandy, thank you. And relationships. In the few months I have been here, I am blown away by the kindness people have shown me. People have actually offered to help, and then the great thing is that they follow through. And that's been remarkable. And they want to partner. So there's a whole list of people up here who we partner with, but I also want to thank PACE and Spirit of Pella, Central College, definitely Pella Opera House and Pella Historical for their support to Visit Pella. The goals for the next 3 years are to continue those long-term relationships that have been formed with local businesses, city council, and area communities, create new experiences, and you can go to the next slide, Mandy, it's a little bit more in depth. Strategic marketing, like I had mentioned before. We would like to add to our website to have a special Care Smart page, a holiday shopping wish book, in recreation. 53% of our guests that come to Marion County actually come for recreation. And we would like to continue to make an economic impact on the community. With additional funding from the hotel motel tax, we'll be able to continue strategic marketing, promotion, in our community outside of our area and provide new marketing that will help our local economy. So I'll let Rob finish up with the Visit Pella update, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Ann, and welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I hope that you agree with the board in that we've made the right selection with Ann Frost as our new executive director. If I could have a show of hands, how many have had a one-on-one with Ann to get to know her in her role? Okay, if not, she's going to hunt you down, I'm sure, to spend some time with her. We're excited about moving more towards technology. The visitors guides that you have in front of you, might get passed around a couple of people, but the digital and the radio, the TV, all that visual marketing is a direction that Ann is taking us towards, and we're excited about that. For those of you that have been around for a while, we used to have a 60% contract with the city 5 years ago, perhaps. Then with becoming an independent agency, if you will, the CVB, and a new relationship with the city, we were given the 57% contract. And we like to think that we've proven ourselves and that you know the value of Visit Pella to our community. And we hope that you recognize that and our efforts with a 60% contract going forward. So we would be reverting back to where we were 5 years ago or so. And in light of present day inflation, you get us locked in for 3 years at 3%. That's a bargain in anybody's book. Thank you for your time, Mayor, Council, and staff.
Thanks. So the contract must be up April 1st. So we're getting that now.
Yes, you are correct, Mr. Mayor. The current agreement with the CVB expires on March 31st of this year. And as Mr. Banter said, currently we're at 57% of the city's hotel motel collections. With the 3%, I think we're basically talking about the same numbers. The CVB has stated it could be up to $13,000 per year. I think our finance department estimated the impact would be about $10,500 per year. So.
Okay. Comments? Mike's going to be hammering out this agreement, so he needs direction.
Well, I'm going to speak with two hats. As a business owner, I know that my husband and myself really appreciate you guys. You're one of the organizations that take the entire business community of Pella and highlight it. And we're extremely grateful for that. And I think that the energy that you exude and the positivity that you bring forward, and it's contagious. And personally, I want to thank you. And from a community standpoint, I think you're a really great investment. Yes.
Is Corey back there? Can't see him. Do we have 2021 numbers, or I know we're lagging by at least 1 quarter yet, or?
Yeah, we have through December 21 right now, so we have a complete calendar year for 21.
Okay, so do you know what that?
Yeah, it was $340,000 total collection.
Total?
Yeah, and in 20 it was $309,000. So, and just to kind of give reference on a normal year, I guess, in 19 it was roughly $60,000.
So significantly down yet. I thought 21 might be a little better than that. I have intimate knowledge of one hotel, and I know that 2021 was a huge year, best year ever for that hotel. think the 3% bump would be justified, especially we may see a couple more years of a little bit lower occupancy in the hotel business.
Mike, was there a theory or that 3% drop from there? Was there some type of mathematical reason for that, or is that just a number pulled out of the air?
There was at the time, as Mr. Bannister stated, that CBB used to be operated under the umbrella of the PACE Alliance. What have you. So by dropping down, based on my memory, and I'm just talking for myself, I can't state for any elected official that may have voted. So if any misstatements occur, it's purely on me. It's my understanding, based off my memory, on the 57% down, there was some thought that it may be some savings on some administrative cost on it, which would justify a lower amount. And frankly, it was during a negotiation period of time. That was the first consideration. Second one, as Corey stated, about the timeline when this happened, if memory served me correctly, we were seeing some pretty big increases at the CBB. I'd added as well. So we weren't talking about going from 460 down to, Corey, 340. Yeah, it was just the opposite. You were seeing some fairly significant increases. So it wasn't so much that the percentage, it was look at the total dollar amounts that were being paid to the CBB. So that was probably more the issue at hand from the city standpoint, was looking at the total funding allocation. So.
Well, Ann had a very nice open house. Now, I thought that they gave me on purpose a defective book. Is there something why they're upside down or a nice open?
Oh, the recreation is upside down, so you can tell the difference.
Okay.
Calvin, no, I gave you extra cookies.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I remember that well.
Sweetened you up.
Did you sit at home and do this?
Yeah, I did.
I did. In your
Well,
lazy
I tried to stand on my head, and that didn't work well at all. So.
Okay, so you guys in a consensus to the 60%'s okay for the next 3 years and reevaluate? All right.
Thank you.
So it shouldn't take long to sign this agreement.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks for your work. And I know you're a big part of why we do get a lot of visitors, so it's great.
Great, thank you.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Hopkins 4. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Spore?
Yes.
Raiderhorse?
Yes.
Anstra?
Yes.
Carlson?
We are adjourned. Thank you.